If you are someone who struggles to find a foundation shade that is light enough for you, and your friends and family tend to joke about how the sun reflects off of your legs and you always just look like a flat out ghost in any flash photography photos, then this just might be the tutorial for you. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to my channel. If you don't know the shimmy, then you are clearly new here. So my name is Delana Cherie, and I am all about helping you sort through the noise of the beauty industry and find the right products and routines that work for you. And today I'm going to be walking you through everything that you need to know about how to achieve really flattering makeup for fair skin, because girl, I have lived it. So I am very naturally fair-skinned, obviously. This is actually not the fairest of the fair that I get. But whenever I don't have any self-tanner on, this is where I am right now in terms of my fair skin. And I honestly absolutely love fair skin. Although I do love using self-tanner as well, fair skin is like, I purposefully got as fair as I could for a long time, like years, because I just freaking loved it. I loved the way that makeup looked on my fair skin. I was like living my best life. And so I feel like I have really mastered makeup that looks good on fair skin and just like brings out all of our best qualities and brings us back to life again. So I am going to be walking you through everything that you need to know about how to make your makeup flattering for your fair skin. So the first thing to note about fair skin, which if you're a fair skin queen, you know this, is that everything in fair skin, our skin is basically translucent. And so everything shows through, every little bit of redness. I have several little friends here that's showing through. Our dark circles are a harder contrast on our skin. You know, just any little beauty mark, like everything just shows on fair skin. And so it's hard to get that really, really flawless look without feeling like you have to put a bunch of makeup on your face. So that is why one of the first steps in creating really flattering makeup on fair skin is actually to color correct first. If you've never used a color corrector before, I'm not going to go too much into detail within this video because that is just a whole thing in and of itself. I am going to use a green primer. This one is from Maybelline. It's the Master Prime Studio it says it's the blur and redness control one. So we are really just going to be focusing this primer on the areas of the face where we get most of the redness, like the cheeks, nose, chin, and maybe in between the brows / forehead here. So keep in mind that as you are applying something like this that has a very, very light green tint to it, you're going to be stimulating your face, so your face is going to be more red for a second, but that will calm down. Wait for all that redness to calm down and then see whether you like what the green primer did or not. What's really important to note, pretty much no matter what your skin tone is that the darker your dark circles are, usually the darker and redder your color corrector needs to be. So for somebody like me, and mine don't even look as bad on camera because of the lighting, what's really important to know about under eye correctors is that usually the darker your dark circles are, the darker you need to go with your color corrector in order to really neutralize that. Now on camera you guys really can't see my dark circles as much, but they're alive and well today. So I'm going to be going in with a peach corrector. This one is technically not even a corrector, but it does have a really, really peachy undertone, and it's the Lancome Tint Idole Ultra Wear Camouflage Concealer in the shade 110. Now they do have a full-on peach corrector that you could get as well. This one does fine for me. So we're going to apply that just in the areas where we have the dark circles. We don't treat it like a concealer where we blend it out everywhere. But basically your goal with color correcting, whether it's green, peach, whatever it is, your goal is to have as even of a surface as possible before you apply your foundation, so that you don't feel like you have to put on 10 pounds of foundation to cover up all the imperfections that fair skin tends to just let live on our face. What is really helpful whenever you're applying your corrector is to actually look down so that the shadows hit right in the darkest place. It's not cute, but it will allow you to see, okay, this is really where I get the darkest, so just kind of dot, 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 done. So now that we are all concealed and as even as possible, now if you have any big breakouts that have dark purple or anything like that that's really going to show through the foundation easily, go ahead and put a color corrector and or concealer over that before you apply your foundation. I decided to pick a really neutral foundation, something that will work for pretty much all seasons for this video, so that no matter when you're watching this, whether it's winter, which is how it is right now for me, or whether it is the middle of hot freaking summer, this will still be a good foundation option. So this is the MAC Studio Fix Fluid Foundation, has an SPF of 15. Decent coverage, buildable. Foundation is not really going to change much for fair skin. It's just really going to depend on what your preference is for foundation. So whether your preference is sheer coverage, medium coverage, or full coverage, that's really up to you. I do tend, especially whenever I'm more on the fair side and I'm not self-tanned or anything like that, I do tend to reach for a fuller coverage because I just feel like it helps me to look more alive and more done up. And when I'm tan, I feel like I can get away with doing less coverage and still feel like really comfortable and confident and like I'm still kind of made up even though I'm less made up. You know what I'm saying? I do recommend doing a fuller coverage, like medium to full coverage, but do whatever you are comfortable with. By the way, I have the shade NW13. And just like any other foundation, you want to start by applying in layers and just slowly build it up until you like the finish and the coverage. By the way, I'm using the AOA Studios high definition brush. It's the F4, $1 girl, and it's great. So this is actually kind of a funny tip, but it is something that I highly recommend, especially if you're going to do photos or it's a special event and you have like a low cut dress or anything like that that shows your chest. Like this isn't even low cut, but it's just off the shoulder. I do recommend actually bringing that foundation all the way down to your chest area because fair skin tends to, like all of our redness, especially if we blush or anything like that, like it really shows here. So bringing that foundation all the way down just helps everything to look really nice and cohesive. This actually is something that I do pretty much any day, even if it's just an average day, and I'm wearing like a low cut shirt. It's just something that I've gotten into the habit of. The next thing that is super important for fair skin is actually adding dimension, because with fair skin, it's like we lack color, we lack glow, we lack just overall dimension. It all just like starts to look flat. You know, especially if you've applied a full coverage foundation. Now this is the Makeup Revolution Conceal and Define Concealer. Really great dupe for the Shape Tape, and this is in the shade C1 and it's only like $8, I think. How much concealer you apply or don't apply is totally up to you and your preferences, but I do recommend applying it in all of the high points of the face to add dimension. So that's going to be like under the eyes to conceal and brighten, and then the forehead, the nose, the Cupid's bow, and the chin, just so that those areas grab a little bit more light and look a little bit more lifted. The only thing that I might be cautious of this concealer of is that it does tend to be a little bit more matte than the Shape Tape, so if you have like super dry skin, maybe go with something else. And if you are actually more fair than me, then you can always mix it with a little bit of like a white concealer. You could just use a white concealer, honestly. There are a lot of brands that have white concealers now. I think that NYX has one. LA Girl has a white concealer. Kat Von D has a white concealer. Does Makeup Forever have one? Makeup Forever I don't think has a white concealer, but they have one that's pretty freaking close. So. And then I'm just going to set everything like usual with my Hourglass Veil Translucent Setting Powder. This one I have been using a lot recently, but I'm actually using it specifically for this tutorial because it has a little bit of a shimmer to it, like a very light sheen. And with fair skin, again, it's like all about adding that little bit of dimension and glow and just liveliness to the skin. So this one I'm just going to apply to my under eyes and any other areas where I put that concealer, and then I'm going to use a different powder, a different option for you guys for the rest of the face. Now quickly, I'm just going to apply my Too Faced Shadow Insurance to get our eyes ready for brows and mascara and eyeshadow and everything in between. So one thing that is important to keep in mind as a fair-skinned queen like ourselves is that brows can look really intense on us really fast. So we want to make sure that we kind of have that nice balance between a nice defined brow, but nothing that's like too dark and extreme and heavy, even if you have dark hair. So the way that I like to make sure that I'm not making my brows too heavy is I actually go in with the tinted brow gel first, coat all the hairs, just kind of get the overall shape going, and then I'll go in and just spot fill with a pencil. So I'm using the Anastasia Dip Brow Gel in the shade Auburn. Like even there, as you can see with nothing else on our face, like it's already starting to get a little intense, right? So I'm actually going to go ahead and let that sit and dry completely while I do my eyeshadow. So we already have our eye primer on. One thing that is super important whenever it comes to eyeshadow for very fair skin is I actually do recommend using really warm tones, like things that will just bring a lot of color into your look, rather than going with like a really cool neutral tone like this guy. Maybe go into something more like this that's actually going to bring a little bit of depth, the dimension, but also warmth to the look. I'm going to be using the Urban Decay Born This Way, and I'm probably gonna dip into Riff and Punk a little bit. I know that this one looks super, super dark. If you just use it sparingly, it can actually add a lot of nice dimension without it turning super, super dark and heavy. So taking a fluffy brush, I'm just going to be dipping into Riff and applying that all throughout the crease. I'm also just applying that underneath my eyes. Go as dramatic as you want with the lower lash line. I like to blow it out pretty far down. Now I actually do recommend going a little bit more dramatic than what you may be used to, just a little bit. Try to stick within the browns and the dark browns and the warm colors like the oranges and the peaches and stuff like that. Remember that with fair skin, we gotta give a little bit more because we don't have a lot. So I'm just taking a little fluffy angled brush and dipping just a teeny tiny bit into the Punk shade, like literally just tap, and then starting to apply that to the outer corner and halfway through the crease. And starting to apply that into the outer corner and halfway into the crease. See, we don't have to use dark shades and have a dark look. It just adds a little bit of depth. I think I actually want to dip just a teeny bit into Baja. It looks like a really bright orange, but if we just take like a little tap and blend it over, it'll warm that look up a little bit more. Also applying a little bit of that Punk shade right underneath the lash line. So after you've done all of the dark shadows, if you are at a point where you're like, I really want to brighten this up a little bit more, like just make it look lighter and brighter a little bit, you could go into a really light shade like Breakaway here. It's like an almost white, but has a slightly champagne reflect to it. Or you could go into, if you want to keep it more in the smoky range, you could go into Stranded or Blaze. Blaze has a little bit of a pink reflect, while Stranded is like a truer gold. Since this is a little bit of a daytime look for me because it's the middle of the day, I'm going to go into Breakaway just to keep things a little bit lighter and brighter and airy, and I'm just gonna take my finger and apply that to the lid. I can even take that into the inner corner, just brighten that up a little bit. So you could just throw on mascara and lashes if you want and call it a day, but I do want to make this a tad bit smokier. So I'm gonna go in with a dark brown liner. This is the Permagel liner from Pat McGrath Labs, and it is in the shade Black Coffee. Oh my gosh, love this liner. It is so good. So I'm just going to do a relatively thin line with a tiny baby wing on my top lash line and then line the waterline. Oh, that got a little thicker than I wanted it, but. So I kind of generously applied it to my lower lash line, so I'm just gonna take that brush that I applied the dark brown Punk shade with and smudge it out a little bit. So I know that it all looks a little bit crazy and probably over dramatic right now, but bear with me because once we do the rest of the face bronzer and everything like that, it's all going to pull together and it's gonna look perfect. So along the lines of doing something that's not like a hard black or anything like that, I'm going to go in with the Perricone MD. This is the No Mascara mascara. I actually freaking love this mascara. It is like an almost black brown, and so it's just like slightly softer, but it still gives you really great definition, everything in between. That's not what this video is about, but it's great. See, once you add the lashes, it's just like... Okay, it is now time to go back and finish our brow. So I'm actually just taking the AOA Studios something brow pencil, sculpting brow pencil. This is in the shade medium brown, I believe. That's right, it's AOA Studios, which means that it's from Shop Miss A, which means that it was only $1. So I forgot to do this earlier, so I'm gonna do it now. This is the CoverGirl Advanced Radiance powder in the shade Creamy Natural 110. So I'm just gonna do a light dusting of this guy all over where I did not set with the Hourglass powder. And I'm doing this powder in particular because this one has a little bit more of a sheen than the Hourglass one does. So if I just do a light dusting of it all over, then it will just give me a tiny bit of radiance, just enough for like the light to catch in some places, but we're not putting a ton of powder on our face. Adding a little bit of powder afterwards is also just a really great way of adding a tiny bit more coverage if that's something that you want. I was totally fine with my coverage beforehand, but it just helps to really bring everything together. I don't know what it is about it. It just looks good. So, bronzer. Let's talk about that because bronzer is really hard for people with fair skin. It usually pulls yellow or it pulls orange or it's like ashy, and it's really hard to find that good in between. So I'm going to be using a matte bronzer today, and I'm going to reach for the Too Faced Milk Chocolate Soleil bronzer. This one I do really feel is that nice in between to where it's not ashy but it's not yellow, and it's still gonna give us a little bit of warmth, which that's really the biggest thing. Is we don't just want to go straight into like a contouring shade because then we're losing any little bit of warmth and color that we could be giving our fair skin, and so this one I feel like is really that perfect in between. I'm just gonna apply that with my Farrah brush 50F. Oh, so good. It's like just the perfect amount of warmth. I cannot explain. So I'm just applying that underneath the cheekbones, sides of the nose, forehead, and underneath the jawline. And honestly, I say if you have the right bronzer color for fair skin, feel free to like go ham. That's what I do. It just, especially if you're doing photos or anything like that, it just makes all the world of a difference. Sometimes if you want, you can just kind of like take whatever's left over on your brush and just kind of like, why not? Just like brush it everywhere, girl. So I'm going to give you a couple of different options for blush depending on your undertones, because whenever it comes to picking the right blush, especially for fair skin, since blush just like pops on us so much, if you have a cooler undertone, so you're more like on the pink side, then that doesn't mean surface redness, just keep that in mind. It's like, what do your veins look blue on your arms or do they look green? And if they're blue, then you have a pink undertone, so you'll probably want to go with a blush. Where'd it go? You'll probably want to go with something that does have more of a cool pink undertone, because that will complement your skin a lot more. And then if you are a warm undertone, which is where I lie, because my veins definitely show up more green on my wrist, so you definitely want to reach for a more warm undertoned blush. So here are the differences. You can see this one looks a lot more orange and this one is like a very cool pink. So I'm going to do one on one side and one on the other so that you can see the difference and kind of decide what you like, because I do tend to alternate between the two. Typically I reach for this one more, the orange one. So on this side I will be applying the cool toned Dolce Pink from Milani Baked Blush, and I'm just applying that with my Chic blush brush. And very, very important for fair skin, especially if your blushes are pigmented, because most blushes are pretty well pigmented, and so make sure that you just do a really, really light tap, like just pick up a tiny bit of product and slowly build it up. Otherwise that blush is gonna get really out of hand really fast. And then on this side, I will apply the more warm toned Coralina blush from Milani. It is also their baked blush. So as you can see, whenever they are on the face, they actually look pretty similar, but this one just has a little bit more of that orange tone to it, which I personally really, really like, because I'm all about like the warmth and everything like that. Like, so now it is time for the best part in any routine, but especially for fair skin, is adding that dimension with some poppin' highlight. I'm going to apply a few different options. So one of my longtime favorites is actually the e.l.f. Moonlight Pearls highlighter. This one is like, will give you a bangin' highlight, and I think it's only like $4. That is if you want just like a good neutral, works on anyone highlight. If you do want something that's a little bit more of a gold tone like a lot of people use, but you struggle to find one that's for fair skin, the Ofra highlighter in Star Island is perfect. It has a yellow undertone, but it never pulls like that weird gold. Like, it still is really nice and light, but it still has that yellow in it that gives it that gold look. And then if you want something that's a really, really beautiful sparkle, now this one will actually work on a lot of different skin tones. There's the Stila Silver Lake. It's called the Heaven's Dew, and this one just has like the most beautiful sparkle. It just kind of gives like that wet, glossy look to it. So on the right side of my face, I'm going to use the same brush and apply the e.l.f. Moonlight Pearls highlighter. And then on the warm tone side of my face, I'm going to be applying the Ofra Star Island highlighter. So pretty. Just like bang. And then sometimes I do actually like to layer the Heaven's Dew over my highlighters. So you can just take a little bit on your brush and just kind of sweep it. Okay, it's getting out of hand, but we're gonna go with it. Oh yeah. Oh. That's more glow than I've normally put on, but you know, do it for the tube, I guess. But what I do absolutely love doing with this guy as well is just taking a little bit on my finger and just like, oof, right on the eyelid. Look at that sparkle. So beautiful. So then last but definitely not least, we want to apply a color that isn't too much of a hard contrast, like something that's really, really deep and bold. Even though we do want to bring color to the face, we want something that's a nice in between, especially if you're wanting to do something a little bit more wearable. So I'm gonna go in with the Buxom Hush Hush lip liner. This one is like my lip color, but a little bit of a rosy rusty pink, so it brings that color to my face without it looking like a color, if that makes sense. I'm going to line my lips completely with it and then fill in my lips all the way with it as well. And then one of my favorite things to do whenever I have fair skin especially is apply a good freaking gloss, because we tend to look just a little bit dull. So bringing a good gloss on the lips just, it just like brings that liveliness. I don't know, can't explain it. Let's just do it. This is the Morphe gloss in the shade Boho. Yes, look at that. Just so subtle, but so good. Now, if you came to this video because you're wondering if you can get a really nice bronzed healthy glow, you totally can. And check out this video right here where I actually walk you through how to make yourself look and feel like a total bronze babe. And I will see you over there.